because you do know that our culture here in Mesoamerica predates everybody's so-called culture and arrival here. We were here before everybody got here. We are the real native indigenous Americans, the native indigenous Mesoamericans. And that is the message I'm carrying forward for this network, right, for this channel that I set aside to do broadcast specifically for our Mesoamerican culture that we need to reclaim and drop the whole African American thing, because we are not African. We are not. And I'm going to keep pushing it. We are Mesoamericans, not African American. We are the first Americans here, and that can be clearly seen that we were the first people to set foot on this land and build civilizations on this land, which got this land going forward. You see, got this land going forward. We are the real reason why people came into this society. We are the real reason why everybody wanted to be a part of this thing. You see, we had trade going here. People knew about this place, as they called the New World. They knew about this place because our people were already here and trade was going on. When word spreads of trade and where people are able to make money and things like that, that tends to, go all over the place. And this is what happened. You see, went all over the place of where our people were. So now we, as a people who are definitely in need to know who and what our heritage is and where we came from, or where we, what our roots are, we need to acknowledge ourselves as the true Mesoamerican people, the real Native Americans, the real indigenous Americans of this land. We have a culture. We have a nationality. This is our country, and we need to stop acting as though we were brought here in bondage and that we are guests here in our own country. People always try to make us seem like we foreigners are aliens and that we don't have inalienable rights here as Mesoamerican people. Again, we are not African American. We need to stop looking toward Africa for anything. Before I continue, am I making myself clear? Am I coming in clearly to everyone? I want to make sure I'm coming in clear before we continue. I want to make sure I'm coming in clear. I want to make sure I'm coming in clear. All right. This is our country, you see. And every time they make us go around and keep reminding ourselves that we so-called African Americans, I told you what that says is that we have bought into the lie that they took us from Africa in bondage on slave ships and brought us here into America to serve them and pick cotton and do field work, which is a damn lie. That's a big lie. I just recently saw a documentary on what it was like to be a slave on the plantation of George Washington. They talked about, they got records about the slaves. He owned about 500 or 600 slaves, something like that. Okay? And they talked about what it was like to be a slave on George Washington's plantation. All right? Now, they had slaves. See, a lot of what people don't understand is they want to paint this picture that the slaves, all they knew how to do is pick cotton and do field work, basically pick the harvest, and that the white people was the one that was farming the land and they were just picking the cotton or whatever, and that was it. No, that's not it. The reason why black people, so-called black people, were really used as slaves and put into bondage, and why they were considered valuable, is because we had skills. We had skills. Okay? We were carpenters. We were woodworkers. We knew how to lay bricks. We knew how to build. The women knew how to sew. The women knew how to cook. You see, the men were brick masons. Knew how to build and do all these things. The men and the women knew how to farm. They knew how to farm land. You see where I'm going with this? In other words, our people were skilled labor. They were a skilled force already, and they were not taught that by the so-called white man. White people didn't teach our people a damn thing. Okay? They never tell you, nor they ever let you know, well, where did these people get these skills from? How they know how to be bricklayers? Now, I'm telling you, this is what they said about George Washington's slaves. Go look it up. I'll put the link on my page. How is it that Africans, or if Africans had these skills, the tribal Africans they claim to get, how come they wasn't living no better? How come they weren't living in homes and, built spaces and things like this? Now, they claim they brought our people over from Africa. This is what they claim. They claim they brought our people over from Africa, right? And that, we didn't know how to do nothing. We was just a bunch of jungle savages. But then here, George Washington, this is in the 1700s. How does he have slaves that know how to cook and clean and sew, and men know how to build, and brick masons and know how to carpenter and wood, carpentry and things like that, blacksmiths? How is it that these men know how to do this, and they come from tribal beginnings, African primitive hut villages and whatnot? Because this is what they try to make it seem like we came from. So where did they learn these skills from? White people damn sure wasn't teaching them that. White people was not teaching black people no damn skills. They didn't know how to do anything. When they came here, they didn't even know how to farm the land. They say that in the history of America, according to them, the natives showed the first white people who showed up how to farm the land. They showed them how to use fish as fertilizer to plant into the ground. Now, when they were showing that, pay attention, 'cause I'm going to show you. I'm going to try to get a piece of that documentary. The Indians, as they showed them, the so-called Indians, those Indians, they was looking like black people, so-called black people. You see, they made them real light-skinned, so you really couldn't tell, that gray look to them, but they didn't look like Mongoloid Indians, is the point I'm making. Reason being is because those were black people, so-called black people, a.k.a. bronze or the copper-colored people that were showing these Caucasians who showed up here how to feed themselves. This was in about the 15 or 1600s, something like about 1500s. I'll get the date on that. But they was telling how all these white people died coming over here. When they came over here, they was starving. They was eating each other. They was about to burn one white man to stake for about to eat his pregnant wife. They got so hungry they ate their horses. They was starting to eat their clothing, eat pieces of their clothes. They wanted to eat. So, and the one guy was about to kill his pregnant wife and eat his wife, and they was about to burn him at the stake. And then they came across these quote unquote so-called Indians who did not look like that Mongoloid Indians you see. They came across these people, and these people fed them corn, or what they call maize, because they always keep on attributing corn to the Mesoamerican people, maize, right? Now, even today, the so-called Mexicans use maize or corn to make tacos and things like that. But my point is, that is a lie that those people, the so-called Mexicans, planted corn here. That's a lie. That was bronze people, so-called black. We planted the corn here, and we was those so-called Indians, that, and they didn't even use the term, and they used the something, Maloney something tribe, so I forget what the name they used, but they didn't say Indian. Indian is a terminology that really came later. They started calling them, they would call people usually when they came here by their tribe, by the tribal names. White man started calling these people Indians over time. You see, they would call these people by a tribal name. And most of those people they came across, the majority of the people they came across when they came here was so-called black people. You see, descendants of the Mesoamericans. You see, we still had descendants of the Mesoamericans still around. So those are the people that they came across when they came into this country. They came across the Mesoamericans, and they found the white man starving. They fed him. One white guy, I forget what his name is, James, something, they set up in Jamestown. One of the things the white man, when he got there, the first thing he planted is tobacco. He started growing tobacco from seeds he stole from somewhere in South America. He brought the seeds over here and started planting tobacco. And that's where the tobacco plantation started to come from in South Carolina. I think it was in South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, Jamestown somewhere. This had to be like the 15 or 1600s. This was before Washington and all of them. You see, before the 13 colonies, all of that. So the white man basically made his way over here. But the reason why they basically would take in and ditch it, because, that's another way about how black people got into slavery. Another way they got into slavery is because when the Caucasians started coming over here and they started making their money, their monetary system, the thing, the currency of trade. You have black people who didn't know how to get that currency, so what they did was a lot of them, they hired themselves out as indentured servants because they had skills. They hired themselves out as indentured servants at first before there was slavery. Our people was indentured servants. We knew how to do things. You see, we were indentured servants. We worked for the people or worked with people, and we got money that way, because these people had started making deals for trade. These Caucasians had land. They were making deals for trade and stuff like that. So our people would work with these people as indentured servants, and they was bringing over African slaves, but they stopped that in the early 1800s, about 1808. They stopped bringing slaves from Africa, and they didn't have that many here. They dropped them off mainly in the West Indies and certain places, but they stopped bringing them here, and it was very small. And they just started, taking the indentured people, and then eventually the indentured turned into slavery, and then the so-called white man started, allowing people to, take slaves. And this is when they started coming in militias and groups and taking black people's land. But our people had land here, and we were growing here. Obviously, we had to have land, and we had to have lives here, and we were building here if we had those skills. That's what made us more valuable than the Indians. See, they didn't take the Indians because they want to tell you that lie. They took the Indians because they didn't take the Indians because the Indians was fighters and they was warriors. That's a load of BS. That's nonsense. Because if they were such fighters and warriors, then why are they on plantations now? They didn't take the so-called Indians, the mongoloid-looking Indians who they tell you are the Native Americans. They didn't take them because they didn't have any skills. They didn't have any skills. They didn't know how to farm no land. Them people did not know how to farm no land. They didn't know how to build anything. You see, the women was not sewing anything. Maybe they might have knew how to stitch together a few things, but all they basically knew how to do is live off the land and hunt. That's how they always show you the so-called Native American. They don't never show you them planting no damn food or having no farmland or building, or they always living in teepees and huts like they camping out. How is it that you're able to trade people who know how to do carpentry, have people that know how to do carpentry, have people who know how to do brick mason work if these people were not building homes? The plantations on which George Washington lived and all these Caucasians lived was built by black people, bronze people, the copper-colored people. They forced our people to build their homes and work the land and make them prosperous. At first, like I said, we hired ourselves out as they were setting up because they wouldn't at one point, this is how they got our people to go into slavery, allowed them to go up under the so-called white man, is because white man, they wouldn't deal with our people. So as more of them started coming over here, they started being like, okay, well, we're going to just basically, so we're not going to let the so-called black people get in on the trade and nothing like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to, basically start creating this white system where white people can only get money and things like that and get for what they need and whatever the case is. So they start bringing guns over here, rum and whatever. So they start structuring themselves, and they created an economy around Caucasians. So the only way to make money in the system they set up is you had to go in indentured servitude or some kind of bondage, or, something up under the white man. And this is how they were able to get so-called slaves or indentured servants. Because, again, how you know they was indentured servants? Because they told you slaves or so-called slaves could buy their freedom. How does a slave can buy his freedom? How do a slave get money? If a person is a slave, how do slaves buy their freedom? No. Who gets to buy their freedom is indentured servants. How do slaves earn money? How are they able to earn money? You see? How are they able to? Like I said, the only reason they didn't use the so-called Mongoloid Indians in the slavery is because they didn't know how to do anything. They were not skilled people. You see? They were not skilled people. They didn't know how to do nothing. Our people knew how to do everything because we were over here doing it before the white man came. We was building places, building homes and things like that, building places to live before the white man came. You see? And all they did was make us build our homes for them. They just forced us to eventually, because they got their hands on guns and weapons, and they all got, a bunch of them started coming over, so they outnumbered our people, and they had weapons. That was the only way they were able to do it. And then we couldn't, then they made it so we couldn't trade, you know what I'm saying, or get money or things like that, because money was now the system of trade. You couldn't get that. You see? And that's how eventually they got our people to go into slavery to them. Because now it was just a thing of survival now. Even if you did get free, a lot of times they wasn't dealing with you. So they got all on code, and they got clicked up together, and they was like, okay, well, we just going to circulate this money system or this monetary system amongst whites, and this is how we'll force the niggas into slavery, because they ain't going to have no other choice, because they, because we trying to create an upper class, and we create a bottom class, and they going to be the bottom class. That's how they did that. You see? That's how they did that. And then they got the then they got the so-called Indians. They got the so-called Indians to help them. They're mongoloid-looking Indians. You see, because by that time, I told you a bunch of them came over here and they was mixing in with our people, and some of them stayed amongst themselves, and then the white man started mixing in amongst them. Okay? They were starting to mix in amongst them. So they took those people into slavery, like I said. But like I said, they wanted our people because we were skilled labor. You see, so if you ever see in those, and when they show you in those slave movies, they'll be like, "Oh, this is this Negro here. He can he's a carpenter. He's this. That's what made him worth money. Not because they could pick some damn cotton. You can get any idiot to pick cotton. For that stuff you get children to do. To pick cotton. They wasn't there to just pick cotton. They was there to do work to maintain the plantation. That's what made them valuable. This one's a brick mason. This one's a carpenter. This one knows how to do iron work. They know how to do make horseshoes and do all that. Blacksmith. Hell, some of them bronze men knew how to make guns. Some of them knew how to make weapons. And they probably made a lot of them. They probably ended up making them for a white man. Who knows? But they was using them for blacksmiths to make horseshoes. You see. This is why they used our people. You see, and this is what made us valuable. Because, like I said, it was a privilege. You wasn't considered nobody. You wouldn't consider wealthy if you didn't own people, if you didn't own bronze people. Because, again, and then they want to turn around to us saying, oh, niggas is lazy. They don't want to do nothing. Along with having you working you to death, and raping your women and degrading you, they're going to then turn around and talk about how lazy you are. Yet these are the people that ain't doing no work. They're going to tell me how lazy you are, but these are the people that sitting on their ass ain't doing nothing but watching you, making you work, forcing you to work. That's why I said, man, I couldn't have lived back then. I couldn't. I would have made it my mission to put them to death at any. That's all I would have thought about. Sleep and eat and hate and sleep and eat and death and hate, man, to them, man. Death to these people, man. Death to them. Death to their descendants. Anybody, because again, had we done that to them, they'd feel the same way. They would still feel the same way. If we did them the way they did our people, the white people would have never got over that. They hate us now, and we ain't did nothing to them, and they hate you. So imagine if you did anything to them, how they would feel about you. It'd be on every time they see you. It'd be on. They'd be openly calling you niggas. And stay away from, we hate you. And you ain't did nothing to them, and they treat you like that. And you niggas running around here loving them. Y'all running around loving them. Took your culture, took your history, called you black people, said you niggas came from Africa. And how y'all not angry at the so-called black people who teach this nonsense that we black, that we came from Africa, which is nothing but the history, the made-up history of the so-called white man. How y'all not mad at those people? How you want to embrace those people? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. How you want to mix with these people? If you want to call them people, these animals who would do something like that, you don't look for justice or so-called justice and judgment from them. Because in order for you to render ultimate judgment, you have to be a people who are of law and order. Like I told you, community law, community order. If we don't have that amongst ourselves, then we become fair game for anybody. We become fair game for every and anybody, and this is what you see today. See, that's why I go and I say what I say, and this is why, when I told you back in the early 1900s, this is carried down from our Mesoamerican heritage. It was a thing for our people to have skills, that our daughters could sew and cook and, sew and cook and clean, because even being able to clean and disinfect is a skill. Everybody, remember I said that when I talked about my father, I said everybody's not skilled at cleaning. That's a skill to be able to clean effectively. For a woman to be able to clean, cook, sew, do things like that, that comes from Mesoamerican women, bronze women, having those skills. You see, that comes from Mesoamerican bronze women having those skills. That's what made women valuable. See, the Mesoamerican bronze woman set the standard for what women are supposed to be. Seamstress, cook, you see, cleaning, taking care of children. You see, nowadays, these so-called black females can't do a goddamn thing. The men, they supposed to be able to have either maintain or have a business, a trade. You see, because a trade also not only meant trading as in, you know, doing carpentry, woodwork, and things like that. It also meant you had a business where you were trading things. In other words, you had to have a business. You had to be active. You see, you had to be making money or bringing in income to take care of your family. You see, that's a Mesoamerican thing. That's a Mesoamerican thing. This is what our people were. And again, this is why the so-called white man came. He took people who were skilled labor, not no manual, menial labor, as they say, all you Negroes can do is just pick cotton. Yeah, who the hell you think built the White House? Built their White House for these devils to sit in? Who the hell you think built that? Who the hell you think built these plantations and maintained them? We did, because we did it before. You see, and when we got out of slavery, we would go and we start building up our communities again. And they hated that. That's why they would come through and tear down our communities, because they was angry at the fact that all that good skilled labor, along with those pretty women. See, because again, you know, the beasts know that our people were, like I said, not just as they weren't trying to say we were skilled labor, but we were good to look at. We were attractive people to them. We were attractive. They want to, oh, these niggas, they animals. That's game. Because if that's the truth, then why would you want to lay with these people? Why would you want to lay with the men, lay with the women, touch the children? If these people are the most disgusting and ugly thing, why would you want to lay with the women and put babies in them, raw, lay with them, have sex with them? Why wouldn't you want to be with your own white woman? You see? Because, like I said, they looked at our people and they saw us as valuable. They had skills, and these were people who were not really given to fighting back and would accept what they were given, because they're trying to live and raise their children, even though they living in the harshest conditions, even though, like I said, I couldn't have been back then. It took obviously a special class of black people back then, so-called black people back then, because I couldn't have lived back then. I couldn't. I'd have been somewhere with the Maroons, you know, and enjoyed putting these people to death, these animals to death. Because anybody that takes your dignity, takes your freedom, takes your right to live freely in this world, they deserve to live miserably, or they don't deserve to live at all. They don't deserve to live at all. And that's the mentality you always should have. Let no one ever take your freedom. No man, unless you're a law breaker and you break the law, that's different. If you break the law and you encroaching on other people, that's different. Then the law goes into effect and you got to go up under it. But these people broke no law other than to just live and want to raise their families and be free. But again, I say going even back, our people did break the law. We broke the law of the Most High. We broke the law of Amen and helping these animals, allowing these animals to come amongst our shores, showing them how to take care of themselves. We were being good-hearted and compassionate people, feeding these people. We should have let them die, because all they did was bring filth. All they did was bring degeneracy. They didn't bring gratitude, you see. And what they didn't tell in the American thing is they killed and ate some of our people. They did kill and eat some of our people, you see. Those people that came, they want to clean the stories up. You see, they want to clean up the stories. So you got to, you know, when the so-called white man gives you history, of American history, you got to basically You know, look at it with a raised eyebrow, because it's all what you call revised history. It's all revised. Us coming on slave ships from Africa and all this nonsense. You see, like I said, they even had this thing where they talked about, oh, the light-skinned women, the light-skinned black women, they worked in the house and whatnot, and they was like basically bed wenches for the white man. They was his bed wench, you know, but the dark-skinned slaves worked in the fields, you see, thus creating that whole thing. So, question: where these light-skinned slave women come from? Where they come from? You see how people are able to build a system and maintain it, and they use you as the product to pass through the system? You see, one of the main reasons why black people are considered childlike, one of the main reasons why black people are considered childlike in this society is because of our inability to form a system and work together. That's why we're considered childlike by everybody else. You see, white people and everybody else, they can formulate and put together a system and maintain it. Black people cannot. Black people have a childlike mentality, and when you have a childlike mentality, you're going to always be overtaken by people who have an adult one. See, when they came here with business in mind. They came here with business. They ain't come here bullshitting around, trying to be compassionate, loving everybody, because I'm pretty sure it would have been reversed, and we would have came off them shores, and we would have came over, they would have turned our asses right back around. Go back wherever you came from, nigga. You ain't coming on our land. But like I said, you so-called black people, like I said, our people was compassionate. Our people was compassionate. And look where it got you. Look where it got you. And this is still continuing to this day. So when I say, like I said, and this wasn't, like I said, this wasn't, by the time they ended up coming and taking over and doing what they did, our people were at the last of their strength and their power here in the society. You see, it wasn't the original people that was here, that was maintaining the pyramid cities and things like that. Like I said, those were the Mayans, the Aztec, the Inca, the Olmecs. Those are our people, man. They maintain those societies, man, and that's where they get their skills from. See, because skills are passed down from father to son. There was no damn trade school, and like I said, where our people get them trades from? Where our people get the trade of being carpenters and woodworkers? The white man didn't teach them anything. He don't even want to teach you how to read and write. So how the hell why he going to teach you how to be a carpenter and then sell you? He ain't teaching you nothing. You see? You tell me where they had some white man training course where they was teaching so-called black men, bronze men, how to be carpenters and woodworkers, because that's a skill. That's not something, that's like you got to have an apprenticeship. You got to be working and building houses. So again, if they came with that skill, where did they learn it from? You see? Where did they learn it from? So you got to, again, throw that out your mind when they say our people are not valuable and things like that. Our people are very valuable to them. If it wasn't for our people, there would be no America. There would be no America if it wasn't for our people. Our people fought in every war in this country from start to now. Even in slavery, they had so-called black men fighting. You see, to keep the Union together. They even had these niggas fighting to keep themselves in bondage. So our people fought every war, from the Revolutionary War to this war to today. Yet you still treat it like slaves. Yet they still let you go into bondage. You see? So this should let you know the character of the people that you deal with and their descendants. Because they said that they said almost every person, they meant white person, could trace their heritage who've been in this country back to the Mayflower. You see? Meaning, in other words, these people are all interlocked. That's what they meant. These white people who didn't come here through Ellis Island, these people are all interlocked through the Mayflower. So whenever these white people say, "Oh, I didn't enslave the people. I didn't do it." Yeah, you did. Your ancestors did it. So you did it. We still paying for things our ancestors did. So why aren't they? Why are you not looking at them the same way? Because they talk nice to you now. Because they want to lay with you now, because they want to act like your friends now. You see? That's how you niggas get deceived, man. This is how you get deceived. You think you got friends. You see? Of course they have no conscience because they animals. Animals don't have a conscience. Do an animal feel a way when he rip apart another animal? Do an animal feel any kind of way? This is why they have no conscience. You see, conscience and compassion, that comes from our people. These people are animals. They are animals. Even to this day, they still animals. And y'all got to get that through y'all goddamn head, man. These humans are nothing but two-legged animals. You see, that's why they had no problem with doing what they do. See, stop thinking of them as, because they walking around like me and we can have sex and breed with them. How they animals? You see, this is the problem right there. See, as you have seen them as animals, had you been looking at, had our people been looking at what they was looking at, which is wild animals that had us in hostage and captivity, then you would have had no problem with slaughtering them. See, the reason why black people was hesitant about slaughtering these people, these animals, is because they didn't look at them as animals. If an animal got you pinned somewhere and trying to take your life, ain't you going to do everything in your power? Wild dogs, you're going to fight the wild dogs to death, and you're going to try to slaughter those dogs. You ain't going to just let yourself be torn apart by the dogs. And see, this is the mentality you so-called black people get. You start thinking, well, damn, you know, they look just like me. I can't put them to death. Those people, but then they'll turn around and slaughter you without even thinking about it because they don't have any conscience. They don't feel no kind of way about anything. They just like to kill, especially you. They bloodthirsty. You see, they're bloodthirsty, and they don't recognize you as one of their kind. You don't have the animal genetic in you. So they will always look at you, and they will always want to possess you in some kind of way because they're angry. They can't be you. See, the animal in these humans, it makes them be the treacherous people that they are. They'll even turn on each other. They'll turn on each other. See, animals don't feel any kind of they don't feel any kind of guilt for what they do. None. And how you know that is even today, these so-called white people will sit up here and they'll put George Washington up on a pedestal knowing that George Washington was a piece of shit. He was a racist piece of shit that owned our people, that had slaves. Now, like I said, had George Washington been a so-called black man and owned white people, oh, he'd be every kind of scum in the book. Oh, he's no hero. He's no founding father. He's a piece of shit. He did that to, how could he do that to our people and whatnot? And they say all that. But switch it around and put them in it. Oh, he's a great man. He's a founding father. And he, you know, and if it wasn't for him, there would be no, if it wasn't for black people, there'd be no America. George Washington made no difference in America. If it wasn't for black people, all his dreams and all the things that he wanted to see it happen for in America, because they was escaping persecution in their own land. So they came over here because they had nothing going for them there, so they had nothing to lose. That's another thing that gave them that energy to push our people. See, we was, like I said, we was on cool, or we was on chill, because we was like, well, damn, we eating good. You know how Negroes get, we eating good. You know, things going, we trading at the markets, we doing well. You see, we able to, we in shape, we ain't sick. You see, they come around, so now these people come around, they getting off the boats, they sick, they malnourished. You got a pack of wild animals that ain't ate nothing, that's malnourished, that's dirty, bringing diseases, getting off. They see these clean people because they want to make it seem like, oh, you got off the boat, these savages, they love to call, because that's how you know. I'm going to show you how you know factually that the so-called Indians or the natives that they came on, when they came off the ship, they saw our people. Because when they use terminologies like savage, they talking about our people. They're not talking about the Mongoloid Indians. When they don't call the so-called Mongoloid Indians today savages. So when they still call our people savages, and if something happened to these niggas are savages in the hoods and this, that, and the third, they don't never talk about the Mongoloid Asians on the damn reservation, on the res, as they say. They don't. Do you ever hear any talk about them? These people are alcoholics on the reservation. You see, they kill each other on the reservation. They got gangs on the reservation. They do all that stuff. But you don't never hear anything about the res, as they call it. They still referring to our people as savages. So whenever you hear them talking about the savage Indians or whatever, they're talking about our people, the Mesoamerican people. And no, our people, like I said, there's a difference between us Mesoamerican people and so-called American Indians. We are not the same people. They mixed in with our people and took our culture, our Mesoamerican culture. You see, we got to get these things right. We got to get things set right because, again, like I said, our people tend to have this mindset and this mentality that, oh, you know, our people that, you know, we didn't really accomplish anything and, you know, we really didn't do much of anything. We have this mentality that we got to let go, man. We have this mentality that we have to let go. You see, we got to stop believing that we did nothing here in this society. It would be no America if it wasn't for us. It would be no America. This place wouldn't be inhabitable. And then they tell that lie that so-called black people, you know, when the white man came, they cleared up the land. Let me tell you something. You know who they had clearing the land, taking all the trees down for them to be able to live? That was black people doing that, so-called black people. They was doing that at gunpoint. And sometimes they were doing it because they wanted to have, like I said, we was doing that. We was clearing the land for more because this place had all this, and they try to make it seem like it was just one black man and a bunch of white men with little axes chopping a tree. No, they had whole teams of bronze men taking down forests. You see, that's what made you so-called black men, so-called black males. That's what made you valuable, that you could work, that you were skilled labor. You see, they might have had a few indentured whites working with them, coming along with them. They might have had that, but the real work was being done by the skilled labor. You see, if they left it up to the so-called Indians to do any work, there would have been no work done. Because do they ever show them doing any work? Do they ever show them building any houses? Do they ever show them farming any land? Hell no. Hell no, they don't show that because they wasn't doing that. They was not doing that. They was doing it. They was showing you exactly how these so-called Native American Mongoloid Indians was living. They was living on, like I said, they was living in little campgrounds with teepees set up. You see, there wasn't no bricks that was being used. So where these brick masons come from? It wasn't a white man building a damn thing here. You see, there was a strong Mesoamerican population here, even descendants afterward. And our people were still in that tribal nonsense. Again, that's the reason why our people, the white man was able to come in, because when they said this too, they said that when this white man came in and planted tobacco in Jamestown, they said that, you know, in exchange for our people feeding these Caucasians, the Caucasians, they came with weapons, of course, and they let us get the weapons for the food. We showed them how to farm, plant fish in the ground for fertilizer to grow the food and the crops. So they was able to constantly, keep farming and getting in crops. You see, taught them where to fish at. You see, fed these people, took care of them. And a lot of our people, like I said, we was amongst them, and a lot of our people just moved, like I said, our people who started intermingling with them, because that's a thing that happened too. That's another way, because the niggas was doing that early too. Some of our people I guess you had some early bed wenches. You see, and some early bed bucks that was laying with them, and that's another reason that they don't want to tell you. That's where a lot of disease started coming from, and our people started dying from these diseases they had. A lot of our people started laying with them. You see, intermingling with them, mixing our seed with them. And that's how a lot of our people died off. But our people moved around. We moved to different areas. Not all of our people. A lot of our people are still here, moving to different areas and places like that in the southern areas where we can harvest and grow food and stuff, like build houses, cut down trees. We're taking down trees, building cabins. You see, where the hell a white man learn how to build a log cabin from? They came from fucking England. Excuse my language. They came from England. Ain't no log cabins in England. Where they learn how to build anything. You see? Where they learn how to build anything at. Where they learn how to do carpentry at. You look at a lot of stuff over there. Like I said, a lot of the architecture in England was built by the Moors. A lot of the architecture and things that you see in England, the castles were built by the Moors. Those were not built by Caucasians. You see, try to find a lot of so-called Caucasian architects, because usually they can tell you the name of all these Caucasian architects who built these places. Why don't they have them? Why don't they have them? They had little shanties where they was living in the same house with their animals, living in the same quarters with cows, living in the same quarters with they dogs and they cows. They was living all in the same lodging with animals. This is how they lived. And it's another reason why they got diseases. And the Moors came and started showing them how to, move, have separate quarters from their animals, start washing, telling these people how to clean themselves. They rejected that, but they took on everything else as far as, being able to learn how to eat their food a certain way, learn how to cook their food. You see, it's another reason why they were spreading diseases. That's how they lived. That's how they really lived. Them castles in England was not built by Caucasians. They was built by the Moors. You see, because the Moors was conquering Europe. It wasn't just Spain. It wasn't just Italy or Sicily. It was all of Europe. And they built all over Europe. They built all over Europe. So a lot of those places where you see brick buildings and limestones and things like that, bronze people built that. They didn't build a goddamn thing. You follow that? And then when our people was we was ruling in those areas around that time, then they started coming down from amongst our people, and they was living in them huts and things like that, and they just basically came over, and they took everything that we built, the castles, everything. They just moved in, you see, set themselves up a monarchy, basically after hours. They basically moved in, and they ran our people out of Europe, because our people were the first ones to set up shop in Europe, not them. We set up shop in Europe. There's buildings in Europe because of bronze people, not because of Caucasians. See, a lot of things they're not going to tell you. You got to dig for it. And you got to read between the lines. You see, the things they don't tell you. Because trust me, they know the history of the Mesoamericans. They know the history of their people as well. They're never going to show you the full history of their people. But they know the history of their people was disease, filth, degeneracy, you see, savage brutality. That is your so-called white race. That's your so-called white race before they came over here and tried to clean themselves up. And how they did that, they just basically put all of their filth on our people. They wiped all their filth off on our people, and then took our clean image, our upstanding image, and put it on themselves. Because they even talked about how when they encountered our people, how the men were strong men, and before they got on the racial thing, how the men were, how these were good-natured people, the men were strong, and they were compassionate people, and were fair people. Basically, how you so-called black people act around white people, because y'all act decent when it comes to white people. Y'all always treat white people better than y'all treat each other. You always treat white people better than you treat each other. You see, that's the reality. That's how y'all that's how y'all act toward one another. You always treat them better than you treat yourselves. And again, this is why our people are in the condition they are. You see, this is what made them, they felt that we were ripe for the picking. We were ripe for the picking for them because, like I said, they seen that our people would rather going on each other than going on them. You see, we started believing that we had friends amongst these people, and that still happens today, where they can trick you out of your heritage, out of your culture. Like I told you, in the 1828 definition of what an American is, they tell you who the real Americans are before white people came here. And they were not talking about American Indians, because if that was so, they would have said that. Obviously, that terminology wasn't even in effect yet. And this was, well, no, it was in effect. Because, or Indian, or all that. They didn't say Indian. Now keep in mind, this is 1828. This is when all the so-called Indians were all running around. How come they didn't describe the first Americans as the American Indians or the so-called Native American Indians? That would have been clear. Who are the copper-colored races? Who are the copper-colored races? You mean black people, bronze people, the real copper-colored race people? You can see that. That's who they really mean. They likened our skin unto copper, and they knew the difference between brown people. You see, they knew the difference between brown people, because if that was the case, they would have said the brown people of the society. They made a description of our people as the copper-colored people, you see, which is what all so-called black people's skin really is, a copper tone. We are the copper tone. In fact, they, they even got the company when they want to put their tans on called Copper Tone. What's the tanning company Copper Tone? Y'all know that company Copper Tone? That's basically them saying they want to be you. They aspire to put on their copper tones and look like you. You see, that's all they doing. They want to put on your copper tone. They want to have our copper tone. And instead of you all being proud of and embracing your copper tone, you want to have that pale flank skin. You want to mess up your copper tone. You want to destroy your copper tones. And again, this is what, they love looking at the richness of our people, the ranges of complexions, the strength of our people. This is what made them feel special, because, again, you look at these white people, they wasn't worth shit. They wasn't nothing, you see. And when you could sit up here and you want to tell me I own a bunch of strong men and good-looking women who got nice bodies and frames, and these men are strong, and these children, they're going to grow up and be that way. I own them. I can do whatever I want with them. Hell yeah, they're going to be happy. Hell yeah. I actually own them, and there's a law that says I can own those people, miraculously made up by other scumbags who own people. Right. And in their mind, there's nothing wrong with that. In their mind, there was nothing wrong with them doing that to our people in their minds. This is how sick they are. You so-called black people need to really re-examine your thinking when you start talking about these so-called calling yourself American Indians, because that's just as worse as calling yourself African American. We don't have to rewrite history. We don't have to lie about history. We don't have to make things up. That's what the white man does. We can be our real selves, our truthful selves, and who we are as a people. Those of us born in America and those who are born in South America, and North America, Canada, Mexico, our people all over the UK. Mesoamerica is everywhere, man. Mesoamerica is international. For real. You see? Because, again, how you know that is what you call American culture is international. What is American culture really? The music, the language, the fashion, that's American culture. Okay? That's American culture. And we were the first ones to produce the music, the real music. You see, we were the ones to produce all the music. The music is what unites people, brings people together. The fashion, the style, the talk, the look, everything. That's our people, man. That's our people. Okay? That's our people. They brought over that English look, the so-called white man. But if you notice, don't nobody dress like that. No one dresses like that anymore. You see, real style, real things that's going to cement itself. Those things never get played out. Jazz, rap music, all that in its pure, pristine, that music is not going anywhere. And any form of next music that's being played was going to be played out. It's going to be our people again. Same thing with fashion, haircut, style, things like that. Let me tell you something. Let's make this very clear. When you see the haircuts of like the tapers and the fades and all that, you know where that comes from, right? That comes from the Mesoamericans. That we had what they call mohawks. Mohawks is nothing but a style that bronze people had. That didn't come from the so-called Indians. The Mohawk hairstyles came from bronze people. Those are Mesoamerican hairstyles. Those are nothing but early tapers and fades. That's what those are. They were just bald on the side because, like I said, we was cutting our hair in styles. Same way the women are known for doing cornrows. Again, maize, corn. These are all our hairstyles. So whenever you see, and again, that was a giveaway in the whole American thing about white people coming into America, because that's really what it was. The history of Americans was really white people coming into America. You know what I'm saying? They didn't want to talk about the real history of America. They didn't want to go all the way back to the Mesoamericans. Why they didn't want to do that? The white man's such a big history buff. He'll tell you about the so-called American Indians. Why does he stop there? Why did he stop at the so-called American Indians? Because he knows those are Asiatic people. He knows those are Asiatic people. And I told you the white man is an Asiatic person as well, Caucasiatic. They're Caucasians. They're Asians as well. They have a brotherhood, a connection with the Asians. That's why they were able to. That's why they allowed the so-called American history to start, in their history books with the so-called American Indian, which are nothing but Asians. You see, if we want to talk about the history of America, why didn't you go back really further into ancient America before y'all got there? Why you don't talk about that? Why don't they make a video about ancient America before the white man, before the so-called Indians crossed over? You know why? Because they know it'd be our people there. And you would see bronze men with what they call mohawks and tapers and things like that. Basically what we're doing today. And no, they didn't have no straight hair and whatnot. They had woolly afros. They were cutting mohawks and things like that back then. You see, that's where that comes from. That's where that comes from. Right. That's where that comes from. So wake up, man. Wake up. You see, our people, like I said, we have to know what's truly us. Because, see, people sit up here and they try and take our style, our fashion, everything. Exactly, even the Mesoamerican weapon, the tomahawks and all that. You see, now I show you the tomahawk that they show you the so-called Indian guy. Did I not show you, what do you think that thing is in the hand of the Mayan person who's part of the Mesoamerican? When you see the Mayan image, that person that looks like me, that image I put on my page, that's a tomahawk he's holding in his hand. But they'll sit up here and tell you, oh, that's the so-called, what's the name? Even the bow and the arrow. The bow and the arrow. The bow and the arrow is Mesoamerican. The tomahawks are Mesoamerican. All of that. And if you notice, the tomahawk is shaped like a pyramid, like a triangle. You notice that? Notice that the tomahawk is shaped like a triangle. You notice when George Washington came over here, they had those hats like triangles. They look like triangles, like pyramids. Exactly. The axe came from the tomahawk. You see? So like I said, that tells you right there. That tells you right there. These people, like I said, when they are describing those Indians with the Mohawks, they want to give the Mexicans, no, those are the descendants of the Mesoamericans. That's all Mesoamerican culture. But they want to try and put the Mexicans, you see, another Asiatic people in place of us. They want to try and do that. You see? They'll do that. All right? Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Okay? So our people got to realize, like I said, what our true culture and heritage is. Because, again, we have to stop with this, we have to stop with this this nonsense about, oh, we African. We leave a lot of our history on the table. You see? We leave a lot of our history on the table with this African nonsense. You see? We leave a lot of our history of who we are on the table by being with this African American nonsense, man. See, we have a real history here, a real civilization here, a real society here. And we are those skilled people, man. Don't let them tell us that lie that we was just swinging in trees in Africa. That's some nonsense the white man made up. We was just swinging in trees in Africa and living in huts. We didn't know how to do a damn thing. We didn't know how to build nothing. We didn't know how to do no carpentry. No what the white man taught us how to do that. Yeah. See, that's what it is. Yeah, no, and you know what? They don't even play themselves enough to say that. They don't play themselves enough to say that. They ain't gonna fix their mouth to say that, because then they know people would investigate, and they know what no white men teaching black people nothing, especially back then. You see, they already knew that. Our people are a culture of skilled people. Again, why you think that black people like when you had what's the guy's name? Booker T. Washington, when he started Tuskegee Institute. Notice Tuskegee Institute was based on so-called black men learning skill, learning a trade, the carpenter. You know, I think they had electrical when the electrician came, carpenter, woodworker, bricklayer, because these were skills that we passed down. You see, these were skills we passed. We just didn't know how to read and write English, but we know how to do carpentry work. You see. We knew how to do carpentry. We knew how to do woodworking. We knew how to do blacksmithing. Because how now think about this now. Again, this is how you know they was doing blacksmithing. How you think they was making the arrows with the bows and arrows? You know that those was not wooden arrows. Those were metal arrows. They were making metal tipped arrows, basically like bullets. They just, like I said, they could have, you know, at that time, our people had the equivalent of what a gun is. Our people had the equivalent with bows and arrows, because we had metal bows and arrows. We had metal bows, and when the metal bows hit you, when those metal arrows hit you, it's like a damn bullet hitting you. It go right through you. That's how sharp we made them. You see, and the gun with the bullets and all that comes from the seeing our people with bows and arrows. The gun is based on bow and arrow. Okay? The gun is based on bow and arrow. And so when the white man came with his gun, he was slow as hell, man. He just used the gunpowder and that with it, but he was slow as hell. He had to keep reloading the thing. So like I said, so a lot of them got killed off. We just had bows and arrows, because we could keep hitting, we could keep putting those arrows in the bow, and we had them like that. We put them in the sack. That was the same. That was just us basically having a gun. You see, a shotgun. We had bows and arrows, and we could hit marks from far away. Them arrows go right through you like a bullet. You see, and we would put poison on the arrows. You see, so we had the equivalent of weaponry at that time. But see, it didn't translate over, because once our people started fighting against each other. See, when we had our ancient empires, we had the bow and arrow, and we was fighting like that. And we had all our society, we kept it intact. But see, when our people start interfighting with each other, we lost the connection. Thus, we lost the communication to go forward as a nation of people. We lost it. You see? That was our gun. That was our gun. The bow and arrow was our gun. You see? So, like I said, we was doing that, bows and arrows and things like that, shooting turkeys. That's how we got our birds. We was shooting birds, shooting turkeys and stuff with bows and arrows. You had to be a blacksmith to make those arrows, to bang them out and put them in the fire and smelt the iron and stuff like that. You had to be a blacksmith. That's where we got that from. That's why it was hard for us to go. They probably didn't even want black people, but they had black people. They knew how to make guns. We knew how to cast metal. You see? We knew how to cast metal. You see? They don't want to give us credit for that. You know? They want to lie and act like, we was just some dumb savages. See, because once you know the reality of where our people, the truth of our people, and the reality of what we really came from and why they hate our people so much and why they wanted to have our people in bondage, once you know that, Once you understand that, then everything starts to make sense. Why they really hate our people. Because they wish they were our people. But they got to hide that. They got to hide that. They need a government and a police system to keep them in power. Because without a government and police system to keep them in power, they wouldn't be in power for very long. You see, they have to have reinforcement to keep them in power. Mentally, their brain does not keep them in power. And what also keeps them in power is our laziness. Our laziness and inability to come together as a community, as a people, under one name, one mind, one soul, one body. That's the only thing that's going to save us in these last days, in these next days. So when I said our people as a race here in America, North America, South America, we are Mesoamerican people. We are not African American. We are not African American. We are skilled Mesoamerican people. People of trades, people of custom, people of culture. It's time for our people to take our Mesoamerican title back as a race, as a nationality, as Mesoamerican in our homeland of what's called North America now, and South America, and all over the continents. Mesoamerican people can be found. You see. Mesoamerican people can be found all over the continent. You see. So we must always be mindful not to allow ourselves to get caught in this idea or this mindset that we as a people are going to somehow, find our heritage or history or the point of who we are here in this society. And I'm going to say this again, even this too. That's another thing, a reason why the so-called Indians, because they notice they let the so-called Indians put our people in bondage as well. The white man did that for two reasons, because the Indians, the so-called Mongoloid Indians, always work with the white man against us. Very rarely will you hear about our people being able to go into and amongst those Mongoloid Indians and have protection. 9 times out of 10, if our people did that, is because those people who were calling themselves Indians had more bronze in them, and they had that bronze in them because they had compassion for our people, and that's why they took our people in, but they were being classified as Indians. So the ones who had the bronze in them, that's the ones who took in the runaway slaves. Wasn't these so-called Mongoloid Indians like they want to make it out to be, because today the so-called Mongoloid Indians and who are Asian and Mexican and a little bit of everything mixed, to eat the Asiatic people. They don't care. They hate our people. They don't like our people. They just like the so-called white man. These so-called Mongoloid, Caucasian Indians, right, who they call natives, they hate our people just like the so-called white man do. They're no different. They're no different. You see, ask them people on the so-called black people on the reservation who keep on with this stupid nonsense about, we American Indians, we Native American. And no, we're not no Native American Indians. We are Mesoamerican bronze people, those copper-colored Mesoamerican people. That's who we are. They took their so-called American Indian culture and heritage from us. From us. They didn't come with nothing either. From everything, from the hair braiding is ours, everything. You need to those hats you see, even when you see Erykah Badu doing them and Pharrell and them, I know the Negroes kind of make it silly looking, but a lot of those hats, we need to start wearing, and Mesoamerican men, we're going to start wearing those hats again, in a fashion style type of thing. Having our own hats like the Navajo hats. Those are our hats, man. Those are our hats. That is not those people's culture, man. That is not those people's culture. When you see the Navajo hats and things like that, and the way those hats are, that's our heritage, man. Those are all based on the Olmec crowns, man. The Olmec helmets. All they did was put a brim around the Olmec helmet. You see, that's where a lot of your hats come from. Those Navajo Joe hats and whatnot. And even the cowboy hat is nothing but a broken down version of the Navajo Joe hat. That's just a broken down version of it. Then they just started making them that way. Those are all based off of the Olmec crowns and the helmets. You see, they have that round type of thing on. All they did was put a brim around it. That's all. See, all this stuff is copied from our people. And again, when you tell the truth, you got a lot of you people, you still believe in what the white man said. You still believe in his lies. You fake historians. Because a lot of time when these people go, oh, well, where's your proof at? We got a whole wall of proof, whole walls and artifacts of proof of our people in ancient America as the Mesoamerican people. But you simple ass Israelites, I got to get on you guys. You guys want to keep on claiming that the Mongoloid Indians is the American Indian and whatnot, and y'all can't even explain where these people came from. Oh, they came from the land of Israel. Nigga, stop lying. Stop lying. You want these other people to be down so bad with y'all, the Mongoloid Indians, even though they not. They think they better than these so-called Mexicans and Mongoloid Indians. They're not your people. I don't care how much you include them in your tribe of Judah sign, your tribe of Israel sign. Those are not your people, man. And y'all will totally negate or cover up the Mesoamerican heritage here. You'll sit here and hand over our Mesoamerican heritage to a bunch of goddamn Mexicans or a bunch of damn so-called Indian, Mongoloid-looking Indians. That's who you'll hand over our culture to, all just so you can say, see, we all the same people. You see, the story is we came from the cargo ships of Africa and they was enslaved. No, they wasn't enslaved. No, they wasn't. How do y'all explain why the so-called, because according to your teaching, all the tribes of Judah were being enslaved. How was the so-called Indians enslaved? Where was they enslaved at? They wasn't. Just us. And yeah, we were brought into a land that wasn't our own. When I said they set up, and made the society for white people, it was no longer our land. They created a law that protected white people. And if you were allowed to be white, then you had that protection. They protected and got behind you. But if you were anything other than white, you had no protection, and that meant you would pray for everybody or pray for white people. Again, this is why I say it's important that we know this history, our history and our true heritage, and that we teach continuously our children to know what their true history and heritage is as Mesoamerican children. You see, it's the next generation that we can utilize to correct our mistakes that we had, because we didn't know who we were. We didn't know where we belong and what exactly did we belong to, what we were supposed to be a part of. We had no idea. You see, again, this is why we're in the condition we're in as people, because we don't know who we are. Again, it's natural, and you should encourage your sons to take up carpentry, electrical work, skilled labor, because that's in our blood, man. It's in our blood to be skilled people, business people. It's in our blood to run trade and be skilled people, carpenters, electricians, things like that. You see, not just a bunch of damn entertainers, man. People that can actually fix things, put things together, work. That's what we did. We are the first builders on the planet. We are the first builders on the planet. We are the first grand architects of the world, us bronze men. Don't let nobody else tell you anything different. They want to lie and try and attribute that to other people. That's a lie. Like I said, why do you think so-called slaves, so-called black slaves, were so valuable amongst all these other races of humans? Why do you think we were so valuable? Because we are skilled people. Wherever we were, we had some type of skill. We could do something. You see. Now keep in mind, it wasn't just the so-called white man putting our people on auction blocks and trading with the Arabs. You see, those people did as well. So again, what made our people valuable? Our ability to have a skill. You see, we were known as skilled people. We were known as carpenters, woodworkers, craftsmen, things like that, craftsmen. We were known as craftsmen, people that can build something from nothing. We were known as the handy people. That was us. They learned that from us. That wasn't something they naturally did. The reason why there's any architecture in Europe is because of us. It's not because of them. You see, because if we left it up to them, they was living in barns and all kinds. They didn't start doing carpentry and all that stuff until later, after our people built on and built up a lot of those castles and buildings and things like that. Then they came along and they started working and building together with that. You see, they started doing that later. That wasn't something that came natural to them. They didn't even know how to not live in the same quarters as their animals. And hell, they still do it today in close quarter with their animals. They have a damn dog that's supposed to be outside. Dogs are not supposed to live in close quarters. They're supposed to be able to go in and out and have their own quarters. They ain't supposed to be on their own separate place. Even cats, like I said, cats is fine because cats are independent and they don't require much. Like I said, you know, they can be domesticated. But dogs, especially dogs that got any size on them, they should have their own interests. That should only be for people who have houses. You see, that should be for people that have houses only. That should not be for people who are just, you know, having pets and whatnot. Because 9 times out of 10, they'll have those pets. You already know what they use them for. You know, they ain't just pets to walk around and feed and, you know, just have somebody to be around. Like, you know, the whole point of a pet was, you see, you know, with these humans. See, back then, you know, again, that's another thing we was good at with them. We trained dogs. They talked about how good we were at training dogs. See, even that's not really original to them. They didn't know how to train dogs. That's one of the things they talked about, how black people was on the plantation with George Washington. They were good dog trainers. You see, they were excellent dog trainers. See, again, skilled people, man. People who had a purpose. People who had a purpose. And that's why I got on you. I said, when they send you to these damn colleges and they got you going to school for nonsense, public speaking, business enterprise, what else? Liberal arts, or, you know, liberal farts, or, you know, some nonsense like that. They got you going to psychology, you see. Like social studies, social work, nonsense, no real skill, no nothing. Every woman should know how to, on some level, sew. Definitely cook. You see, they should know how to sew, make your own clothes, stitch your own handbags, everything. Know how to do some form of farming, know something about agriculture. All women should know how to do that. You see. All men should be somewhat handy around the house. Now, I'm not saying all the way. Some ain't just like, but some men should know how to be somewhat handy around the house. Be able to fix a few things. Certain things you're not going to be on that level of a carpenter. You hire people, but you should all know how to be somewhat handy around the house. Or a good tradesman, one who can trade and make money and do things like that business-wise. It should never be a thing where our people were ever idle and we did nothing, because that's not who we are as a people. We're not an idle people. We're not an idle people. You see, we would pass down carpentry skills to our sons, and the women would pass down seamstress skills to their daughters. They would teach their daughters how to sew, crochet, knit things and whatnot, and the men would teach their sons how to do carpentry work, woodwork, or brick mason work. You see, that again, these are skills that were passed down. You see. Who taught those so-called black men how to build the White House, how to put lay the bricks and measuring? You know, you already know Benjamin Banneker laid out the landscape for, you know, building the White House, and you know, and I think it was him, Benjamin Banneker, or I forget who it was, but that was a bronze man that did that. So I also found it interesting when they were talking about the history of America, and every major event that took place in the society from the start of what was called America with the 13 colonies, they would always show you a so-called black person somewhere around. You see, they would always show you a so-called black person somewhere around. And if there was one black person around, there were many black people around. And the reason why they had black people always prominent and being shown, whether they were fighting the Revolutionary War here, whether they were going through fighting the Boston Tea Tax, and they were showing all that back in the early days, whether they were clearing out for it, they would show you a so-called black man, whether it be with Lewis and Clark and their expedition, it was a so-called black man with them, whatnot, because they used these so-called black people to translate to the other black people that were going through their territories, the other people who were descendants of the Mesoamericans. That's why they would have black people who translate, because these so-called black people that was coming back and forth, they were dealing with the descendants of the Mesoamerican people. They were dealing with them. They would trade with them, dealing with them. So when they brought the white man around, he was, like I said, he was a novelty. They was like, they seen white people before, but they, basically started having contact with Caucasians, started having contact with them. And like I said, they want to keep on saying that that's not our people, that's the so-called Indians, and that we were Africans in Africa. But wait a minute. The history of our people does not match that of an African, someone coming from Africa. The history of our people here in America, being skilled labor, being a labor class of people, and doing the things we did here does not match that of so-called African lineage or heritage. It don't match. It does not match. Because one thing, how people are, influenced, or you got other people doing stuff, because I always look back, if you say you from a place, right, like the so-called Mexicans who claim they're connected to the Olmecs, or the Asians who can claim they are the Native Americans, if you are really the people you say you are, then that means that everything you built before you came here, from wherever you came from, should have the same thing. In other words, whatever you were doing over here, or what you said you was doing over here, claiming, it should show signs of that in your own country. Because if you become all brand new all of a sudden, that means you had an influence. And if you had an influence, that means somebody was basically guiding you on what to do. Or you was watching other people and just copying them and doing your version of it, like a lot of these Caucasians did. You see, they said they already had a five nation, like the Iroquois nation. They had the 5 nations that was kind of set up kind of like what the early foundation of what America was, or ended up coming to be. Now, I bet you any amount of money, again, that was so-called black people, you see. Because you could, clearly see what a lot of our people, when the so-called Indian, Native American, or Indian thing rolled around, that's when you start to see the influx of these Asian-looking and a mix of black and whatnot. Because like I said, they were intermingling with each other. You start to see the intermingling of the Asian/black thing. You see, you start seeing that. But the original people who were doing the customs and the rituals and things like that, these were so-called black people, bronze people. That's why when they saw the heads on the Mesoamerican pyramids and things like that, they saw bronze faces. When they saw it, they're just like, they try to basically stay away from or not talk about it, the so-called Mexicans. Because I told you over in the museum in Mexico, they tell you how the real Mesoamerican people look, and it's black people. It's not them. It's not them. And these are all pictures. Wherever you see them hang up, these are nothing but copies of the actual, or images or real pictures of the actual Mesoamerican, people together, how they looked back then. How they looked as pictures they drew of themselves. This is not no artist depiction. These were pictures they drew themselves. You see, these are pictures they drew themselves. And like I said, in a few of those images, a couple of those images look like me. So what am I supposed to think now? If I see a Mesoamerican ruler and king or whatever they call him, and he looks exactly like me, what am I supposed to think? Oh, well, that's just a coincidence. I'm not a descendant of that guy. I'm really an African. That's what I'm supposed to think. That's what I'm supposed to think. Oh, it's just a coincidence that this guy, this Mesoamerican guy from the Mayan civilization, looks exactly like me. I've seen 2 images of this guy. I've seen plenty of women who look like Mayan and Mesoamerican women, and Olmec shape. I've seen plenty of that. So what are we supposed to do? Ignore that culture? Ignore that because y'all want to attribute it to a bunch of Mongoloids or a bunch of damn Mexican, East Indian, Asiatic people? No, absolutely not.